Somewhere between the sound of a dial-up modem and the first notification of a social media app, there exists a generation that doesn't fully belong to either world. If you were born between 1976 and 1985, you probably feel this without being able to explain it. You remember when people showed up unannounced at your house, but you also learned how to read people through text messages. You were taught to be tough, but somehow you also became deeply emotionally aware. And sometimes it feels like you had to grow up twice, once as a child, and again as the world changed around you. And that might be why you feel different from both older and younger people. Not better, not worse, just different. Here's why. Imagine this. You're about 10 years old. If you wanted to talk to your friend, you didn't send the message. You called their house phone. And you had to go through their parents first. Hello, may I speak to Michael? And that small moment taught you something without you realizing it. How to be polite. How to handle social pressure. How to deal with small discomfort. Now fast forward. You're about 20. Suddenly, the world is changing fast. Internet cafes, email addresses, Nokia phones, chat rooms where people could be anyone. You weren't born into technology. You adapted to it. And that changes a person. Because people born before you often resist change. People born after you expect change. But your group, you had no choice but to learn change. And learning change builds a very specific kind of psychology. Quiet resilience. Here's something most people don't realize about those born between 1976 and 1985. You are what psychologists sometimes call a bridge generation. You experienced an analog childhood and a digital adulthood, which means your brain learned two completely different rulebooks for life. Rulebook 1 said, work hard, be patient, nothing comes fast, respect authority. Rulebook 2 suddenly said, move fast, adapt or fall behind, question everything, reinvent yourself. Most people only learn one survival system. You learn two. And sometimes those systems conflict inside you. Part of you wants stability. Part of you expects chaos. Part of you wants loyalty. Part of you knows everything can disappear overnight. And that internal contradiction, that's one reason you may overthink more than others. Pause for a second and think about this. How many times have you felt older than your age, but also strangely younger than it? Responsible, but tired. Strong, but sensitive. Independent, but secretly wishing someone would just say, you don't have to carry everything alone. That emotional duality didn't come from nowhere. It came from timing. You grew up when failure was still private. If you embarrassed yourself as a teenager, maybe 10 people knew. Today, mistakes can live forever online. So your generation developed something rare. The ability to be authentic, but careful. Open, but guarded. Empathetic, but self-protective. You learned to read rooms before social media taught people to read algorithms. You learned emotional intelligence before it became a buzzword. Because back then, relationships weren't optional, they were survival. Here's another quiet truth about people born in this window. You were probably given responsibility early. Don't cry. Figure it out. Be strong. Many of you became the emotional support system in your families before you even understood your own emotions. And when a child becomes the strong one too early, they often become the adult who struggles to ask for help. Not because they don't need it, but because they don't feel allowed to need it. So you become the reliable friend, the problem solver, the calm one during chaos. But inside, you sometimes feel like nobody really sees how tired you are. And here's the strange part. You don't even know how to explain that tiredness. Because it's not physical, it's psychological mileage. Think about everything your age group has psychologically witnessed. The shift from handwritten letters to instant messaging. From waiting days for answers to expecting them instantly. From stable career paths to constant reinvention. From privacy to permanent visibility. You didn't just live through change, you absorbed it. And people who absorb change instead of just observing it often develop three traits: high adaptability, high emotional awareness, and silent anxiety about the future. Because when you've seen how fast the world can flip, part of you never fully relaxes. Here's a question worth sitting with. Did you become strong because you wanted to, or because life required it? Pause and really think about that. Because many people born between 1976 and 1985 didn't chase strength, they adapted into it. There's a difference. People who chase strength often feel proud. People who adapt into strength often just feel tired. Let's talk about something most people won't say out loud. Your generation often feels caught between two types of pressure. Older generations may see you as too flexible. Younger generations may see you as too serious. So sometimes it feels like you don't completely belong in either group. Too modern for one, too traditional for the other. But what if that's not a disadvantage? What if that's actually your psychological superpower? Because bridge generations often become translators. You can understand older mindsets. You can understand younger struggles. You can see both sides when others see only one. And that ability often creates something rare. Nuanced thinkers. People who don't just react, people who understand. Here's a real-life pattern you may recognize. Many people born in this era value deep friendships over large networks, prefer meaningful conversations over constant interaction, can disappear for months but reconnect like no time passed. That's because you learned connection before convenience. So for you, relationships aren't content, they're history. And here's a twist most people don't expect. The very thing that makes this generation feel different is also what makes them quietly influential. Because while others chase speed, you understand endurance. While others chase attention, you understand substance. While others fear change, you've already survived it multiple times. You may not always be the loudest voice in the room, but you are often the most grounded one. Pause again for a moment. Think about your life decisions. How many times did you reinvent yourself quietly? Changed careers, changed beliefs, changed environments, changed who you trust. Your generation became experts in silent reinvention. Not dramatic transformation, just steady adjustment. Like emotional engineers fixing the structure while everyone else only sees the surface. And maybe this is the realization many people born between 1976 and 1985 eventually come to. You were never meant to fully fit into one era. You were meant to understand multiple eras. And that can feel sometimes lonely. Because people who see multiple perspectives often feel misunderstood by people who see only one. But it also means something else. You carry perspective many others don't have yet. So if you've ever felt like you don't completely belong, maybe it's not because you're behind. Maybe it's because you stand in between. In between old values and new realities. Between patience and urgency. Between emotional depth and practical survival. And that space? That's not confusion. That's awareness. Here's the gentle truth most people in your generation need to hear. You were strong when you had to be. Adaptable when you had no choice. Responsible when nobody asked if you were ready. So if you sometimes feel exhausted, it's not weakness. It's the cost of carrying transitions most people never had to think about. And maybe the real difference about people born between 1976 and 1985 is not how they grew up. It's what they learned to carry without complaining. Perspective, resilience, emotional depth, and the quiet ability to keep moving forward even when nothing feels certain. Not everyone will understand that, but the people who do, they usually lived it too. And if this story felt strangely personal, now you know why.